Imagine a world in which this video is not 2 months late. Got it? Okay, let's go. F1 went on a month-long conflict-related Easter break. When this happens in summer, the teams are strictly prohibited from developing their car in any way. Thankfully, it was not summer yet, so the no touchy-touchy rule did not apply. This resulted in most of the teams bringing upgrades to Miami, and Racing Bulls even dressed up for the occasion. But the biggest news is surely Gianpiero Lambiase finding his new favorite food, papaya. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, then I guess I owe you an explanation. So, what happened? Hey everyone! This is Tank, the guy who doesn't like getting all of those sprints all the time. Serves me right, since now I'm gonna get 2 in a row, as Canada is also a sprint weekend. North America must be really keen on this stuff. Let's forget about it and talk about stuff that has transpired over the forced break. Big one first. Max Verstappen's longtime race engineer, Gianpiero Lambiase, parts ways with Red Bull. His new employer? McLaren. It's been a long adventure for GP, who joined the energy drink squad back in 2015, became head of the race engineering in 2022 and head of racing in 24. He led Max to 4 consecutive titles in what's gonna be a 13-year stint with the team when his contract expires. So while GP moves to McLaren, this will happen no sooner and no later than 2028. So expect to hear more about this closer to December next year. But Red Bull and McLaren's aren't the only ones with big staff changes. I wanna congratulate Alan McNish on becoming a new race director for Audi. His new team brought home only 2 points up until this moment, so he's got a lot to do. Fingers crossed that they score some points in Miami as a nice welcoming gift. Lastly, I mentioned Red Bull's sister team and their new outfit. Here's why. The V-Corp squad goes back to back with their special liveries. This time, it's a refreshing splash of lemon yellow across the car and the team kits. I've seen many people clown on this design, but if you care about my opinion, this is fire. Fits the sunny aesthetic and Miami as a whole very well. And now, we can talk about upgrades. But I guess we kinda need one of those first. A month-long break is quite a lot of time for car development, but not everyone was able to deliver upgrades to Miami. Mercedes and Aston Martin didn't bring anything new, which gives Ferrari, Red Bull and McLaren a chance to close up to Merc, and Cadillac a hope of pulling away from Aston. Within that month, we've also had an update to rules and regulations. You can clearly tell that the FIA got the heat for allowing Ollie's Berman accident to happen. Hopefully, this is all behind us. We also got gifted a 90-minute practice session instead of the usual 60. Bonus half an hour for all the teams to basically try out everything new. There was really not much happening for the most part. Some drivers skipped the chicane of 14 and 15 at best. I could bash Lance Stroll for impeding the fastest and the slowest car on the grid, but instead let's focus on 2 main talking points of the FP1. First, the backside of the Red Bull. Milton Keynes' outfit taking a page out of the Tifosi book and installing a rotating rear wing, first introduced by Ferrari. The difference is, Red Bull's is massive, just look at it! The second, locking up in turn 1. Turns out, keeping up the tire temperature was not an easy feat here in Miami, and lots of drivers cooked their tires shortly after switching to a new set. Which makes sense, because realistically speaking, no one was really pushing on an outlap, but rather focused on getting more temp into the rubber. Still, we've seen Arvid Lindblad, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Arvid Lindblad again, Fernando Alonso, Gabriel Bortoleto, Valtteri Bottas, Oliver Behrman, Arvid Lindblad again, and Nico Hülkenberg all impersonate steam trains the best they could. But no one could do it better than George Russell on his team radio.
It's making a noise like a bit like a steam train, like I don't know exactly what it is.
We gotta look out for the first turn shenanigans in quali and race, cause the line between making the turn and completely losing it should be very thin. Session ended with Leclerc ahead of Verstappen and Piastri, though Hamilton and Norris encountered some traffic, while Antonelli was stuck in the pits and did not complete his quali simulation run, so take those results with a grain of salt. Okay, let's start quick. Lance Stroll locked heavily into the hairpin, but his car jumped up a couple of times before stopping on track. Lance got back to the pits, but nothing more than that. Thus, qualifying session that probably wasn't going to be very successful for him ended prematurely. Yellow flag that was waved for the Aston completely destroyed the laps of both McLarens, and kinda unexpectedly, at 3 minutes left, both of them were in the drop zone, while both Cadillacs and Fernando Alonso were in the top 15. Sure, there was a chance for a mistake by either Piastri or Norris, but let's be honest here. Papaya boys were more worried about fighting Mercedes than not making it to SQ2. V-Carbs meanwhile opted for just one lap, and their times really did not convince me they could advance to SQ2. Alex Albon quickly confirmed my worries by knocking out Liam Lawson. He was out alongside Ocon, Perez, Bottas, Alonso and Stroll. Worrying sign for Haas, as Oli was eliminated in Q1 in Japan, and now Esteban got kicked out as well. Best of the rest title is quickly escaping their grasp. Shout out to Verstappen and Gasly almost crashing while driving out of the garages in SQ2. Completely unnecessary risk taking that brought exactly 0 rewards. There was still 8 minutes left to set a time, and both drivers made it to SQ3 anyway. Audi did try to spoil their party, but both Gabriel and Nico were less than a tenth away. Them, Berman, Williamses and Lawson did not make it any further. I'm glad SQ3 was shortened to 8 minutes, so now we only wait for 3 minutes to see anyone on the circuit. Hopefully the next sprint quali it's reduced to 5. Russell was first on track, going early and ignoring the lack of grip. Mercedes gave him the cleanest track possible, but George didn't exactly set the timing board ablaze, and quickly got jumped by both McLarens, Leclerc and Verstappen. The last car on the track was Antonelli, who aimed to battle Lando for pole. Kimi couldn't match Norris, but landed just ahead of Piastri to keep the front row. Good form by the world champion had me remind myself that he was the one to win Miami Sprint a year prior. With pole in quali, there was a good chance he could break Mercedes' winning streak. And before we move to sprint, quick shout out to Franco Colapinto for out-qualifying his teammate and placing 8th. Classic 2026 fashion striked again on Saturday. Both Nico Hülkenberg and Arvid Lindblad unable to start the race, leaving us with just 20 cars on the grid. The start itself was another classic, Antonelli and Verstappen both losing positions instantly. Italian down to 4th, while the Dutchman was left banging wheels with Hamilton. Not much was happening, as the most thrilling battle was the fight between Sainz, Lawson and Perez for 14th. It's good to see Caddy scrapping for positions with someone else than Aston, but in front we've had the usual 6 of McLarens, Ferraris and Mercedes, with the humble ever-present Max Verstappen on 7th, all getting away from the rest of the pack. Kimi tried fixing his poor start by gaining ground on Leclerc, though this effort only cost him further pain. He went deep in his pursuit, throwing him into jaws of Russell behind. It took the Brit about 5 laps, but he got ahead of his championship rival, though just momentarily. 1 lap later, the youngster got his revenge at the same corner as Verstappen has overtaken Hamilton, just meters behind the Mercedes duo. Max was way dirtier than Kimi in his maneuver and did that off track, forcing him to give the position back to Lewis. This, however, was orchestrated so spectacularly bad that both him and #blessed lost almost 3 seconds to the cars in front in a matter of corners. That separated them from the front of the field, so when Max finally did get ahead with the clean pass, he was already too far behind to make any further moves. Few places back, Williamses and Haas's had a battle of their own, Berman battling Ocon and Sainz dealing with Albon. I'll focus on the American outfit first, as there was a solid sabotage attempt going on. The car of Esteban decided to tear off a part of itself, hoping Oliver will drive over it and get a puncture. That car has some devious plans, let me tell you. But in the end, even though Oli did run over the piece of metal, his tires stayed intact. Williamses, meanwhile, after discovering that battling your teammate is mostly pointless when at least one of you might try to overtake a Haas, set their differences aside. Carlos got his chance at an overtake and Alex pitted for a new front wing to test a new setup ahead of qualifying. He was way outside of the points at this stage anyway, and could at least try to get 1 step ahead for the next session. For a moment not much was happening, as Leclerc was mounting a challenge for second place, though crucially all his effort came undone as he went wide at turn 11. A trick he learned from Antonelli, who got rewarded a 5-second penalty for his creative interpretation of track limits. The last few laps saw an incredible overtake by Isaac Hadjar in turn 4 of all places, and Alonso overtaking Perez in the last few corners, sadly not picked up by the TV director. But in front, there were no changes since lap 1. Norris very maturely led the entire sprint in front of his teammate and Charles Leclerc, who made sure Mercedes does not get to see the podium for the first time this season. Though this is not a podium, because it's only a sprint, so I guess no medals? Good enough. Couple of bonus points for Russell and Verstappen, who got 4th and 5th, while Antonelli was dropped to 6th because of his track limit penalty, and then Hamilton and Gasly completed the 8-point scoring positions. Oh, and also, Gabriel Bortoleto got disqualified from P11 due to too high of an engine air intake pressure. Small issue, big consequences that I'm gonna tell you about a bit later. But let's focus on the winner. Lando made it back-to-back Miami sprint wins, and for the first time this season, Mercedes looked vulnerable. Poor getaway from Kimi aside, neither him nor George managed to really bother McLaren and Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Next session was then qualifying for the main race. We quickly learned that track evolution is a thing, and the later a driver was setting their time, the better it was. This could have been the saving grace for Gabriel Bortoleto, who fresh off his penalty had to spend the better half of the Q1 inside of his garage, as the Audi mechanics made sure his R26 is fit for competition this time. But it wasn't too good for Oscar Piastri, who did not really impress with his first time, scoring only 12th, and with a handful of drivers still improving, he looked to be the surprise elimination this time around. And he was sweating bullets as Sainz dropped the Aussie down to P16. However, by the skin of his teeth, Oscar made it safely through, though just as he said,
safely is an ambitious word in that situation, I think.
Back to supposedly lucky Bortoleto. He has had his car fixed, though it surely wasn't the fix he was hoping for. He was on fire, sure, but that's only because his brakes gave up and had to be extinguished by the marshals. Barely any pace in that Audi, 5 seconds adrift from the leader. Gabi was thus eliminated alongside Lindblad and the 4 usual suspects. And McLaren's really enjoyed cutting it close in qualifying. In Q2, Lando went off the road in the opening corners, forcing him to abandon the lap. He was then out of sequence with everyone and alone on the track, trying to get the best time possible. And that wasn't too spectacular, as he only managed 9th and was now staring at a possible elimination. Thankfully or sadly, there was a huge gap behind Gasly on 10th, really highlighting that nobody from the drop zone will make it out unless some sort of a genius, once-in-a-lifetime lap is performed. And as you can probably tell, it was not. Some improvements, sure, but not enough to cover such a difference. Then again, Verstappen did score a banger of a lap, placing him ahead of Antonelli, Leclerc and Piastri. Both drivers from Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren and Alpine got through, while Hülkenberg, Lawson, Berman, Sainz, Ocon and Albon missed out. The last portion of quali was surprisingly very close, with only Pierre being more than a second away from the leader after the first runs. It was Antonelli, Leclerc, Verstappen and Norris in the provisional first 2 rows. But with track evolution I told you about a couple of moments ago, everyone expected those times to fall and new ones to replace them. I know I did, but to my surprise, only one driver was mighty enough to improve his time. None other than Max Verstappen himself. Max was fast enough to topple Leclerc, but couldn't match Antonelli, handing yet another pole to the Italian. That got me thinking, if Kimi fumbles the start again, we might be up for a very spicy fight in front. Charles, Max and Lando all could have a solid chance at an early race lead. I strongly suggest watching the first lap of Miami main race again when you get the chance. Absolutely phenomenal. As promised a few seconds ago, Kimi's start was sluggish to say the least. Max and Charles instantly pounced and we had a 3-wide scenario into turn 1. Both Verstappen and Antonelli locked up, letting Leclerc take the lead. cold tires for Max, and look, around he goes. The fact that there was no DNFs after that is nothing short of a miracle. Sure, the carnage had its effects, such as Verstappen dropping to 9th and Hülkenberg to 18th, but at least nobody died. Yet. Ooh, by the way, how is it that Nico gets unlucky with his car placement every other race this season? The same thing happened in China, and I could count Australia as well, since Garage is a very poor car placement for lap 1, right? On the brighter side, Williamses both made it to point contention, Sainz and Albon both fighting Verstappen, with the former being rightfully angry at the way Max chose his lines. In front, we had Leclerc running away with the lead, followed by Antonelli, who got handed a second place back, and then Lando, Oscar and George. Then a contact between Colapinto and Hamilton behind, but I didn't really even get enough time to see what exactly happened, because just a car behind, Max attacked Liam for 8th but went extremely wide, forcing Kiwi to take evasive action. Something that Racing Bull's team decided could result in a penalty, and as such instructed their driver to give the position back, which literally made no sense, as Lawson abided all the laws. Russell smelled some blood in the water and overtook Piastri, placing himself back at the win contention. He wasn't the only Mercedes making moves though, as Antonelli, hungry for a third victory in a row, took the lead from Charles by the end of lap 4. Monegasque, not really about that idea, took it back a lap later, inviting Norris to the party, who capitalized almost immediately. Then, things got wild on lap 5. First of all, Isaac Hadjar tried going way too tight into the chicane, causing him to hit the wall on the inside, break the suspension, and drive it straight into another wall for good measure. Should his car not get enough damage by those two instances, he decided to beat the shit out of it as well. You could say he really did flip out, while Pierre Gasly was flipped upside down. Pierre found a great spot to overtake Liam Lawson, but luck wasn't on his side. At the perfect moment, the Kiwi suffered an issue that removed his ability to decelerate, and even though there was enough room left for him, Liam could not slow down. Unaware, Gasly got hit and flipped into a wall, invoking a safety car. Terrifying accident really, but thankfully nothing happened to Pierre. As for Liam, he had to retire immediately as his car wasn't fit for competition anymore. Same fate for my favorite unlucky driver, Nico Hülkenberg. And then there were 18. With rain clouds hovering over the circuit and safety car restart about to happen, it became of utmost importance to overtake as soon as possible. Both McLarens taking that to heart. Oscar swooping by Russell, who apparently was on a wrong car setup at the time and blamed his team for not reminding him to switch it up. Count that one as another poor restart by George and another instance of him blaming everyone but himself. Meanwhile, Lando pounced at Leclerc to steal the lead of the race. Antonelli followed suit, though this time Charles put a little bit more of a defense. Sadly for him, there was no option to stop the Italian. For a moment, the race settled down as the only person on a different strategy was Verstappen, who pitted early, using the safety car to lose less time. This meant that he fell all the way to 16th, but you know Max, he's not gonna stay there for very long. And you guessed it, few laps later he was already P7. Him overtaking slowly struggling Hamilton has put the podium places in a little bit of a jeopardy. Should Max hold on to his tires for long enough, or build enough of a lead before pitting again, he could dish out some pain to those in front. Antonelli jumped Norris in pits, but both came out behind Verstappen. The time differences being barely non-existent, which meant that we were about to witness a 3-car scrap for the lead. Mercedes and McLaren on fresh tires outclassed everything Max could throw at them, but you can rest assured he did not give up his spot easily. Meanwhile, a rather unfun race for Valtteri Bottas got even worse, as he was given a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane, while he was in the last place. That's tough. Just like the fight between Alonso and Perez, which took about 5 laps, at the end of which the Spaniard finally got through, securing a 15th spot. Okay, but where's Leclerc in all of that, I hear you ask? Well, this gentleman had a very poor pit stop that put him 6th behind Russell. He gave chase and succeeded in overtaking the Brit, but the damage was done already. Charles was now fighting to get to Verstappen rather than with Kimi and Lando. Just behind him, Piastri started closing in on Russell, and even though it took a couple of laps, the day of George got even worse. Oscar passed into turn 1 and we entered the final part of the race. Antonelli trying to run away with a victory by fending off charging Norris, while Verstappen tried to hold on to his tires and third spot. Sadly for him, it wasn't meant to be. Leclerc got by, then Piastri, and finally Russell, though George did pick up a little bit of damage when he bonked his front wing over a Red Bull. Still, this damage is nothing compared to what happened to Charles. Ferrari man got within Piastri's striking distance on the last lap. I can't really tell you where exactly Leclerc picked up an issue, but he just seemed to be sliding around with no control over the car. Oscar got by and Charles almost immediately lost it. He was no longer able to fight the car, spun and hit the wall. Some suspension damage and now he was limping back home. All he had to complete was 3/4 of a lap, but his pace was nowhere. George and Max appeared in the last corners, both overtaking the Monegasque, with Russell even getting a little smooch on his left tire. In his desperate attempt to get to the end of the race, Charles cut multiple corners, which granted him a 20-second penalty post-race and dropped him to 8th. But in front? In front Antonelli held on. He looked vulnerable the entire time, but he never yielded and got his 3rd win this season. Norris had to settle for 2nd and Piastri rounded up the podium. Huge congrats to Franco Colapinto for making it on 7th for Alpine. And that's about it, so let's talk summary. I'm not gonna lie, deciding on the right order of the losers section was quite a challenge. Many drivers were having an awful weekend. Let's start with Gabriel Bortoleto then. He was less than a 10th away from making it to SQ3. This didn't cost him points, but he also got disqualified from the sprint. Being fresh off of a penalty in the sprint cost him to get no representative result in qualifying. Not only that, his brakes were on fire before he even managed to get back to the pits. His race pace softens the blow of that weekend as he went from the back of the grid to 12th, but it wasn't an overall great showing for a car that could battle for points. Despite how it may look like, Charles Leclerc was actually having a pretty decent weekend. Sprint quali put him at the back of 2nd row, solid showing in the sprint, and a fumble by Antonelli got him the bronze medal for 3rd, which is also where he qualified for the main race. He even managed to lead it coming out of turn 1, so everything felt like this is the weekend for Charles. But of course, rotten luck, it wasn't. He slides one too many times and ends in the wall. For once, he didn't completely crash out of the race, so he managed to get his car through to the finish line, but not before picking up a penalty for cutting corners. There was a chance for podium and 15 points, and he ended up with 4 and major damage. The Racing Bulls driver, Liam Lawson, could probably have had way more fun as well. His V-carb was tricky to set up, as evidenced by the lack of pace for both cars in FP1, sprint quali and the sprint itself. Quali went a bit better as he got 12th turned 11 after Hadjar's disqualification and managed to get a good start off the line in the race. He sadly got the Verstappen treatment, forcing him to give back a position he very clearly fairly gained, and if that wasn't enough, his car just gave up, flipping Pierre Gasly up a barrier as a bonus. Speaking of French people in the barrier, Isaac Hadjar. Just slightly too slow in the sprint as he finished 9th, first spot outside of the points, then technical non-conformity disqualified him from the main quali and he had to start all the way from the back. He was making a solid progress though, as he was already ahead of Lindblad on 15th on lap 5. He wasted little time in his recovery drive, but then he drove into the wall and suddenly all the progress and everything I could praise him for goes to waste. And I guess Hadjar would top the list, if not for the fact that Nico Hülkenberg, Mr. Unfortunate himself, again gets almost no result. He didn't even start the sprint. He qualified 11th turn 10 after Hadjar's disqualification and got as far as turn 1. It was a poor start, sure, but then unfortunate placement and the slightest of contacts with the Williams caused him to pick up a front wing damage that ultimately forced him to retire. Australia, China and now Miami. Finishing 11th in Japan does not make his unlucky streak this season any better. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we welcome Carlos Sainz once again. Comfortably a lead Williams the whole weekend, he got to duel Alex in both the sprint and the main race, coming out on top in both. While he was unjustly treated in his fight with Max, he brings home 2 points for 9th, and I believe it's gonna make Williams very happy indeed. Stroke of luck and a stroke of genius can be a powerful combo. One such example is Oscar Piastri. Mercedes finally looked beatable and he capitalized by scoring 2nd in the sprint and 3rd in the main race. But where is his luck? First of all, he was milliseconds away of being eliminated in Q1 and only got to overtake Leclerc in main race 1 lap before the checkered flag. A lot of things went right for him and he should consider himself lucky. Alpine brings home a lot of points and it's Franco Colapinto's turn to get his flowers. Wonderful performance in both qualifying types, and even though he didn't manage to turn his 8th to points in the sprint, he more than subverted my expectations when he turned the 8th into 6 points in the race. Well done, Franco. You probably didn't see that one coming, but our race winner Kimi Antonelli only gets a 2nd spot on the list. Why? Well, he fumbled his start in the sprint and completed it P6. Simple braking mistake threw him into a fight with George that he did win, but also did that by being a naughty boy and abusing track limits. This got him a penalty. He had his ups and downs in the race, but ultimately converted the pole into a win, so definitely a good weekend for him. Just probably not as good as he hoped it would be. And then we move to the sprint winner, Lando Norris. World Champ didn't really start this season super well, and his performance in Japan definitely left him wanting more. No doubt about that, cause he brought all he had to Miami. He loves this track. He has won here before, and he got back-to-back sprint wins, though fell just short of Kimi in the race. Nonetheless, the Brits should be pleased with how he managed to fight against Mercedes. Lando jumping to 4th in the overall standings is a testament of the hard work of the McLaren squad. They leave us wanting more, but at that moment, it's definitely enough. And it's also enough for this video, so I gotta go grab something cold to drink and edit more videos. See ya!